Hello, my name is Christienne Hinz, and I am the director of the 2024 Zenobia Award competition. And I'm really happy to have some time to introduce Zenobia to our audience. We have with us a number of members of the board of directors, contestants, people who have experienced the Zenobia process. And we're hoping to be able to share that with you so you can get an idea of what Zenobia is like, what it's about, what we do, what our mission is. To make a long story short, the Zenobia Award competition is a competition that is meant to center the work, the design work, the artistic kind of vision of underrepresented groups to the history tabletop game genre. The competition takes place over an entire year. And more than a competition, I would say it's a mentorship system so that underrepresented people who may not have had as much formal training or connection or, connections into the network of game designers, or who may have felt marginalized in the game design space, have a place of their own to come and to learn and to figure out how exactly to design a history tabletop game and to have some way to connect with the larger community and with publishers and things like that. But it is a competition as well. So the competition takes a large pool of applicants from the beginning. It walks them through the process of ideation, from concept design to concept proposal, to prototyping, through competition to playtesting, and all the way up to, if where possible, publication. And you'll see that a number of the games that we have been published or in the pipeline to be published from the Zenobia 1, from the first Zenobia, which was 2020 to 21, I believe. We are looking forward to having the 2023-24 cohort also seems like they're going to have the same kind of success that we had in Zenobia 21. So that's what Zenobia is. It's a place where underrepresented game designers can bring their ideas. And often the ideas of underrepresented game designers are the kind of ideas that are not typically seen in the history tabletop game space. And we're trying to center those things. So that's what we're doing. I would like to introduce you, you probably already know, Volko Ruhnke, who is the original director and the founder of the Zenobia competition. And I was hoping that Volko would tell us a little bit about what inspired him to begin the process of gathering together people from around the world to try to work on this.
Thank you, Christienne, and hello, Connections Online. It was indeed in 2020. My historical gaming friend Harold Buchanan and I, probably with too much idle time in our hands in that era, we had kind of long exchanged thoughts about our mutual frustration about the narrowness of our hobby, historical board games. Both of us had designed games. Harold was a promoter of game conventions and had a podcast about games. And he had efforts in a number of ways trying to invite in more different people, because for us, theoretically, history should have universal appeal and games should have universal appeal. And so why was it that our particular medium of historical board games was so homogeneously old white Anglo men like ourselves? That was a bit of a frustration because we wanted more people to play with than we had. And related to that, we thought, at least, I think we both did. Certainly I did and do. The stubborn narrowness and homogeneity of the topics being covered and the stories being told. I knew from my work in the U.S. intelligence community that the same kind of techniques that we use to explore topics like, World War II Eastern Front or Napoleonic battles or whatever, we could apply very well to looking at all kinds of settings. And so for war games, for military simulations, why did we have such a dominance of these big conventional wars, either in Europe or involving Americans, when there were big conventional, wars all throughout the world, throughout history? And that's a minority of the conflicts when you look at internal struggles and raiding wars and things like that. So just with regard to war games, it seemed that we had these spikes of coverage and then huge troughs, like vast gaps in the repertoire for history. And that was just within that discipline of military history. What about political history, economic history, cultural history, social history, and so on, scientific history, legal history? And we had done different disciplines at work. Why was it that didn't that seem to be the case in hobby games that engaged seriously with history? It was, there was a, sort of tradition that we hadn't broken out of, and the potential was unrealized. And we thought, as game designers, we entertained the conceit that who's designing the games matters. And so we thought, not just let's attract different players from different parts of the world, different walks of life, and so on, but let's specifically focus on trying to attract, support, celebrate, promote, and advance all kinds of different designers in the hopes, rather than the requirement, the hopes that we would get different kinds of historical stories told, different settings, different perspectives, and even mechanically different things than we might otherwise have seen from a narrower cadre of designers. And we thought to harness, to do that, the energy of competition, as games do already. I knew very well from the classroom that if you give people a game to play, they tend to devote energy into performance. And so a contest, while there are pitfalls in that, seemed to be an attractive way to attract and drive effort. It's going to be a difficult thing, and it's not at all an easy thing to say, oh, here's my design, world, and judges and mentors and everybody, give me feedback on my design. That's a difficult step, we knew, for most of us to take. And we would offer prizes, cash prizes, and for the rest of the world to help attract attention to these designers and the competition itself. We would have a kind of a horse race aspect where we would have finalists and finally winners and so forth. And all of that became the Zenobia Award, which, as you said, Christienne, between 2020 and 2021.
Let's move on to talk a little bit about some of the designs that Zenobia 21 came up with, and talk about some of our successes. So, Akar, could you introduce yourself and take it away?
Hi, everyone. I'm Akar Bharadvaj. I'm the designer of Tyranny of Blood, which won the first prize in the Zenobia Award in 2021. I have a little PowerPoint slide deck I want to show. Hopefully this works. All right, can you see my screen? Can anyone see my PowerPoint screen? All right, I can't hear anybody, so I'm going to assume.
Yeah. We are seeing it. You are seeing it.
Okay, cool. So this is So Volko kind of talked through this about the purpose behind Zenobia, but basically over 9 months in 2021, we had a bunch of game designers who designed games on a very rapid scale. We had 145 applications last time. Out of that, 86 concept proposals were written. From there, we had 46 semi-finalists, and then 8 finalists and 2 honorable mentions. And this is going to be an update on where the games are from there. So the Zenobia experiment proved a resounding success. Since October 15th, 2021, there's, I should say 3 games have been published, and at least 5 more have been officially announced for publishing. Many more are still progressing towards publishing. I think I could speak for a lot of people when I say that these games take a very long time to design, so please be patient with us. And if you don't hear updates on some of your favorite games from Zenobia 21, note that they are probably still in the works and will hopefully come to a shelf near you soon. In addition, several contestants have taken jobs in the gaming industry in various contexts. And I think we've all seen a changing in norms and the conversation about what is an acceptable definition of history to make a game about. So that said, let me present the 3 published games that have been published so far. The first one was Tindaya by Lolo Gonzalez. It was published by Red Mojo Games, or Mojo, I guess, in Spain in 2022. It's being localized in other languages, and it's about the indigenous history and culture of the Canary Islands. Lolo is currently working on an expansion that might actually be out by now, but it should be close. And I had the pleasure of seeing this game at PAX Unplugged last year, so that was very exciting. The second game to be published is Rising Waters by Dr. Scout Bloom. It was published by Central Michigan University Press. It's a cooperative area control and set collection game about African-American communities in the Mississippi Delta. Very excited about this one. I've yet to play it, but it's about a region of the country, which is where I grew up, and it's very exciting. And then most recently, I believe just a little while ago, we had Orange Shall Overcome just came out. This one is by Marcel Kohler, who is here with us today. And it's a pick up and deliver game on the Dutch resistance in World War II. Marcel, do you want to talk for a couple minutes about the game and what your process was?
Sure. So I started with I actually started in 2017 already, here and there, on and off on the game, but it was not. So I was a bit hesitant to start with the Zenobia Awards, like to sign up, but in the end, it turned out it was actually not as far as I was sort of thinking or hoping. Actually, when I started in 2021 when I joined the award, the competition, because it still took me 2 years after to actually finalize the game. So it was all a bit bigger than I expected, and those 9 months of the Zenobia Award was really was all quite rapid iterations we had to make, quite rapid changes. So the process was quite quick, and I learned a lot from it. And it helped me to think a bit differently also on how to look at design. So not only the actual game, but making and I just read through it or just looked at it recently. Again, we had to write about some other things related to the topic, related to the game, that made me really think, okay, what else do I have to keep in mind? Do some research other than the research I already did. So that was really an interesting step of the process that I don't think I would have done otherwise. This is one of those things that I really considered, hey, that's also something to keep in mind. And so the game came out in October last year, and I had some reviews already. Actually, the game already sold out in English, even though I printed a few more than I originally expected to need for a while. So I'm happy about the success with it so far. And I recently got a Dice Tower review where they mentioned that it was one of the most thematic games I ever played. And I think the Zenobia Awards really helped in that I try to think also always with theme in mind, and with how can I sort of tell this story, or how can I make sure that the story of the game or the story of the theme comes through in the game. And I mean, I started making this game because of my grandmother's stories about the war, but I wanted to keep the stories of many different people in the game. And so all the characters that you play in the game are real people. And so you can see one of on the photo, actually, you can see the cover, the card of the one person who is still alive, who is one of the characters in the game. And yeah, I try to get people, just as with the Zenobia Award, also try to get all the characters to be different people from different walks of life during the Dutch resistance. So, which was something I wanted to put in there from the start, and I'm really happy I managed to put people in from all over the Netherlands, even though it's not a very big country, but as well as like half of the people female, half of them male. I try to look at other ways how I can diversify the characters, so that actually when you're playing, you also really feel like you're playing a real person and playing. Try to sort of experience a little bit of what they went through. So yeah, and because of the success, I have to do a reprint, and because of that, I'm doing another campaign starting exactly 3 weeks from now, on the 7th of May on Kickstarter. So yeah, I'm working on an expansion for that. That one is almost done. I'm trying to focus even more with the expansion on specific moments in during the Dutch resistance, so specific scenarios where the base game was a bit more broader scenarios. Here I'm really focusing on 2 different moments in Dutch resistance history. So I'm really excited about it. I'm looking forward to this next campaign. But yeah, thanks to the Zenobia Award, I think I made it a much better game based on all the feedback, all the other things. So I definitely could recommend this process to anybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcel. Yeah, I had the pleasure of seeing this game at Circle DC a couple weeks ago, and it's really beautiful. And I haven't gotten to play it yet, but some of the early reviews are really positive, so that's awesome.
Thank you.
So I think I think we'll have a little more time to talk. So I want to keep going through the other games. So those are the 3 that have been published so far. We also have some coming soon. These are all the games that so far have been signed with publishers. So first off, we have Cartini from Darkness to Light by Sharia Ayondini. This one had a successful Kickstarter. I believe it's still scheduled for publishing later this year by Ion Game Design. It's a medium to lightweight Euro game with engine building mechanics on a really interesting theme. It's women's education in Indonesia, and basically how the education of young girls led to the creation of a successful, both the decolonization process and then the building of a nation state. So I'm very excited for this one. Hopefully we'll get to see it later this year. And then we have Winnie Kause by Alison Collins. This one, I believe it's still scheduled for 2024 release by WizKids. This one is, you're playing as historians collecting and publishing evidence to build academic and public perception of the functionality of Machu Picchu. This game is so fascinating. It's one of the few games I can think about that's not just about history, but also about historiography and about how we understand history. I love the cover. It's so evocative. So look for this one to come to stores soon. And then we have Molly House by Joe Kelly. This one, actually, Joe, I'll let you talk about it if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Molly House, as it says there, I've signed it with Whirligig Games for publication. So we did crowdfunding last year, and so the game itself is about queer community in London in the 1720s, and it was something I was aware of before Zenobia Award, but hadn't actually sort of done any real research into. So so my kind of process with the Zenobia Award was a lot of very rapid and in-depth research. There's actually quite a lot of primary documents available online, so that was a really interesting process of going through all those and reading a bit of secondary scholarship on the subject as well. And then well, as I think Christian and Volko said earlier, like there's a mentorship process through the Zenobia Award. So this is the first game that I really designed. So I got kind of expert mentorship from Cole Worley, which was a pretty amazing experience. and kind of rapid, like very intense period of building prototypes, realizing they didn't work at all, tearing them apart and building it again, and doing that over and over again for about 9 months. But in the game, the players are playing as mollies, so everyone's playing as a member of this community. And the victory points in the game is joy. So joy is the main thing that you need to be spreading in the game. It's kind of semi-cooperative. So there is a winner at the end of the game, but in order for the community to survive, there's a collective joy total that you need to get to a certain threshold so that the community survives. But there's also opportunities along the way for players to join with the police against these communities and become an informer against the molly houses, which is how most of the information that the society that was policing the molly houses, that's how they were getting most of their information to kind of build cases against people, which kind of built the legal cases against them. And sodomy at the time was punishable by death, so it was it was quite an intense thing to be researching, but I'm really grateful to have kind of gone through this process. I wouldn't have made this game without the Zenobia Award process. I don't think it would have even occurred to me if I hadn't heard of this award scheme. So this kind of community has really brought this game into the world, which is pretty amazing. And yeah, I mean, I've got to work with Cole, and he eventually signed it through Whirligig Games with Drew, and we've been working on it for the past nearly 3 years now, and it's almost finally got to the stage where we're happy with it. I think we're just doing the very final like development tweaks, and we're hopefully on track to get it into people's hands by the end of the year. So yeah,
that's really exciting, Joe. This game, it's been amazing to see how many changes has been made. There was a time last year where I play tested this game at a con, and then literally 2 weeks later I saw it at another con and it was completely different looking. But it still has that same like core spirit of trying to build joy in times of adversity, and it's incredible game. Highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in the topic.
Oh, thanks, Akar.
So I think we'll have a little more time to talk to you and Marcel about your game design process, so I'll keep going. We also have After the Last Sky, which is about the first Intifada. I believe it's slated for Kickstarter this year. It's going to be published by the Dietz Foundation. This one I find super fascinating. It's a very kind of timely subject matter, but about a topic that's very important to the world. So I'm looking forward to this game. I'm going to say I'm looking forward to this game about pretty much everything I talk about. So just bear with me. Sorry about that. Next, we have 10-1, The Haitian Fight for Self-Emancipation by Damon Stone. This one's set for publishing by Mosaic Games. And it's about the Haitian fight for self-emancipation. It's a cooperative game, an asymmetric one where you are preparing for war and then conducting a revolution against the French colonial government. Damon's also been hard at work since Zenobia 21. He co-designed Free at Last: The Struggle for Equality, and he's working on a couple other games. So definitely follow Damon. He's a great designer, and he's done a lot of really cool work.
He's also one of our mentors for Zenobia 2.
Yes. Yes, he's been very hard at work helping people out with that. So happy to have him on board. As I mentioned, Mosaic Games, it kind of came out of the Zenobia process with some of the some of the participants in Zenobia 1 talking to each other and deciding they wanted to further the process of diversifying historical games. So they have a Discord server. I recommend you join it. This link probably doesn't work anymore. I made it a little while ago. So, but definitely follow along and look forward to see what's going to happen with this company. Then we have Winter Rabbit by Will Thompson. This is about a Cherokee village as it prepares for the winter. It's just been announced that it's going to be published by Absurdist Productions, which is Will's company, and it should be coming to Kickstarter soon. I believe this website, you can, there's a shell, so you can set it to notify you when the Kickstarter starts. The art has changed since I took this graphic, but the new art looks incredible. He found two Cherokee artists who had very different art styles, but they work really well together. And there's some art inspiration by traditional Cherokee art. So I think this game's going to be gorgeous and a lot of fun. Will's continued to refine the mechanics on this game since Zenobia 21 ended, and I look forward to seeing where it goes. He's also made a game called Paleo Vet, which I picked up. It's excellent if you're interested in dinosaurs and the healing thereof. I would highly recommend it. And he's also worked on some solo RPGs and an adventure for the Coyote and Crow RPG system. So those are the games that have been formally announced. There's some more that are still in development. I'll give a very quick update on these, but I'm sure this is not a thorough list. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are still working on their games and just didn't want to share where they are. So we have Junfa Struggle for China by Felipe Sanchez. Felipe made this game about the Chinese warlord era of the 1910s and 1920s, and he's been continuing to develop and test his games. And hopefully he'll find a publisher soon. And we have The Season by Lauren Eno. This is about managing a household's young ladies during the Regency period in England. Think Pride and Prejudice, the game. Lauren managed to get a job out of the Zenobia process. She now works as an associate producer for Coward Brother Alchemy, which made Flamecraft as their most famous game. And she's hard at work on this game, and hopefully she'll also find a publisher soon. Then we have Tyranny of Blood, my game. Since Zenobia 21, I've realized the game has required a tremendous amount of work. I had to cut a lot of corners to get it out in time, and now I'm slowly fixing those. So this game's about India's caste system and how it changed under British colonialism from 1750 to 1947. And I've been working hard to simplify it. Most recently, I kind of tore the gut out of it, where this game was originally a card-driven game loosely based on Here I Stand. And recently I decided, well, what if it's not a card-driven game loosely based on Here I Stand? So I kind of made some pretty drastic changes, and it's a lot better for it, but it still needs a ton of work. I've been speaking to some publishers, but I'm not ready to formally announce just yet. But in the meantime, I have other games coming soon. I have a game about the Iran-Iraq War called Chalice of Poison that I'm working on. And I'm also supporting Zenobia 23. So in conclusion, since the Zenobia Award ended on October 15th, we've had 3 games published. At least 6 more have been announced. And then many more are still in progress. And then a new iteration of Zenobia is ongoing, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But and all those games are on completely different topics, and it's super exciting. I'll also say I've made some great friends out of this process. So this has been life-changing for me. I'm sure Joe and Marcel, as they said, I'm sure they would agree. And made lots of great friends. So here's 4 of us Zenobia finalists from PAX Unplugged last year, and it was incredible that we're all in the same room at once. Christiane, I don't know, are we opening up for questions now, or are we going to save those for the end?
Well, we weren't planning on saving them for the end. We were hoping people would just put questions in and they'd be shown to us and we could answer them. So please don't hesitate to ask questions while we're going. It's kind of conversational as compared to like a formal presentation. Zenobia 21 was a steep learning curve. At least, well, speaking for myself, it was a steep learning curve. Not knowing whether anyone would even apply from that angle to knowing how best to help people, mentor people, how to help people prototype, like all of that kind of work is something that we were thinking about very self-consciously is, okay, if we're going to do Zenobia more than once, right, what do we need to learn during Zenobia 1 that we can take with us to Zenobia 2, to the second one, which is from 23 to 20, which is not 2023 to 2024. So there are some things about Zenobia 23 to 24 that are a little different in terms of how we chose the category underrepresented, in terms of how we organized the mentorship system, how we built a system to help build cohorts and connections between contestants as compared to just relationships between contestants and their mentors. We kind of see Zenobia as being a long-term project where we'll be working on it every couple of years. And so we're very much interested in quality control. And so Zenobia 2 is different in some ways than Zenobia 1. And so we invited people from Zenobia 2 who are currently in mid-competition to speak to us about their work, what it is they're working on, and also about their experience with the Zenobia process. So with that in mind, I think we should have Mar and Federico tell us about their work. Federico, would you start, please?
I'm happy to start, but I see in the chat that some people did made some questions. Maybe we
where are
can
they?
wait for that. They are coming, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I see Jeff Beeler asks, what inspirations got each of you into game design that you've not already mentioned? Marcel or Joe, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, sure. I made my first or started making my first board game when I was 10, roughly. I have it laying around in my room, but it's a bit tough to grab it now. Well, maybe I could if you're really interested. I think I shared it in one of my other interviews before my first campaign. After that, I did a lot of live action roleplay events I organized for about 9 years, 10 years, 8 years, something like that. Which is not board games, obviously, but it's also sort of a games. You also have to make rules and stuff like that. So I was sort of organizing that. And then I was designing games for fantasy games and stuff like that for about a year. And only then I realized, wait, I studied history for 8 years. Maybe I should try to see if I can do something like that. I kind of got the idea after I started as a volunteer at the Dutch Resistance Museum, that I realized, hey, there's a lot of comics. I knew, of course, there's a lot of books about the Dutch Resistance, but not really any like modern board games. So I thought, yeah, well, if there's none, I should just make one maybe. So that was combined with the stories of my own grandmother, and she unfortunately passed away around the same time. So I often wished I had this idea years earlier so I can actually ask more about how her experience. But at the same time, for me, it felt a bit that since there's less and less people that are able to tell their own stories, making a game like this actually gives a way to still keep those stories alive in a different way. Especially since in a board game, you actually make your own decisions versus in a book or a movie or so, where the decisions are sort of made for you, and sometimes you're watching a movie like, hey, why did this person do this or that? And now with a game, you can make those decisions yourself. I try to put some of that in my game as much as I could, which I hear back, luckily, is also what other people experience. But and what I have a feeling that a lot of Zenobia games did is try to get this feel in there. So, but yeah, that's a bit how I started with both this design and games, making games in general.
I can go next. I think Joe and I are in the same camp where I kind of wanted to just make a game. It was kind of a pipe dream for the last several years, and then I read about the Zenobia Award, and it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I was super bored, and I needed something to fill my time, and so I kind of just started it as a way to just do something creative, not expecting it to go anywhere. And then pretty quickly, everything just kind of exploded. And I was like, oh God, as I went from one stage to another, I was like, oh, I didn't expect to make it through this stage. I didn't expect to make it through this stage. And then at some point I play tested a game with friends and it was like, oh no, I made a game. And so I think like Marcel, I studied history in college, and I think I've always been interested in history. I've always been interested in historical games. And so it seemed like a logical fit. And especially, I think more in terms of themes than in mechanics. So it was easier because if you study history, you can get all the information that's already out there, and then you distill it. You don't need to come up with like a new universe or anything like that. So I found that a little easier. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, it was lockdown time. I was used to playing a lot of gigs. I'm a musician, and there was no gigs to play, so I needed something to fill my time. And yeah, I mean, I saw the Zenobia Award. I was interested in games anyway, and I was kind of intrigued by the idea of like designing a game, but it hadn't really occurred to me to actually kind of put something down. And I guess when I started looking into whether there were any kind of games on queer topics, I was kind of not coming up with anything. Like, there were a few, none of them were like serious games, not really any historical games. So that was like a big, that was a big inspiration for me, was just like wanting to see something in the world, and it wasn't there. So I was like, well, someone's got to make it. So I decided to just kind of take it and run with it. And yeah, I'm glad that I did.
I think you fundamentally changed the hobby in that way. I think there's inspired a lot of games on related topics. So it's amazing to see.
Well, if I have, that's amazing.
I think that's the only question I see.
Is that the only question? We can go on to talk about Zenobia 2 and what's been going on in people's game design learning curves. We started with Federico, I think. Can you go ahead?
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Hello, Connections Online. I don't come from studying history, so for me, it was, the pandemic had also something to do, but it was more like it reapproached me to gaming, to board gaming in general, and to war gaming in particular. Like, I was, as a kid, always playing board games, but I never got. And I got kind of serious for a while, but then I moved into Europe. I live in Switzerland now, and I kind of let it go until the pandemic hit. And then I retook board games, and I got more seriously into also, historical war games. And what fascinated me, since I started playing more and more these games, is like how they work as a model of history or of certain historical processes. And this I get, like, by education, I'm a physicist, and models are my what I work with. Simplified models of the world is basically what we do. And what I noticed is that games were basically simplified models of historical processes, and I got more and more fascinated with the modeling part and with the mechanisms with which we can model things that are very, very complex. But yeah, that was the state in my mind when I heard about Zenobia. Like, honestly, I never designed a game. I never thought I would design a game. I just heard about this, and I said, this sounds interesting. And it sounds like the part where it was really reeled me in was when it's like, this is a mentorship program. I don't know what the Zenobia Award is, if there is a real award. I just got really interested in there are mentors, and they would
I guess there's a question. Let's see what it says. Well, I have thoughts, but I'm not the only speaker here. I'm not sure if I can come up with 3, but one that leaps to mind right away. Let me read this out loud. If you had to name 3 things which are key to supporting and empowering underrepresented groups in gaming, game design communities, what would that be? This is my opinion, but more cohort building, that is making more connections between underrepresented groups together so that they don't feel quite so atomized or so alone or isolated, so that we have a sense of a community and a place where we can go to think and talk, and to share ideas and to cross-pollinate creatively, in addition to our interactions with the larger community. So I think that forming community is really, it's a sustaining kind of a gesture that gives you some stamina to move out into spaces where you're not represented, to be able to endure some of the discomfort that comes from being in spaces where you're not represented. So developing a community is really central, I think, to furthering the goal of increased diversity in the gaming space, in the tabletop gaming space, and increasing the visibility and the acceptability of games designed by non-white people, by non-Western white people. So that's something that's actually at the heart of Zenobia. So that's one of your 3, but I only have one that I can think of right now. So let someone else add what they think.
Well, I was actually, Akar, you wanted to?
Oh, sure, I can go. I think kind of a welcoming spirit, which unfortunately isn't always there in historical gaming. I think traditionally board games, and especially historical games, especially war games, have been a specific niche hobby to the extent that I think people felt very in group about it, and they didn't. They felt like it was their thing, and they felt a little threatened by new folks. And I think I think we have to kind of overcompensate to do that now, to be welcoming to new folks, so that it's not intimidating to go to a con or go to a game night with a bunch of folks. Because I know, I mean, I think we've all been to game nights where people just talk shop, and they talk about war games that they've played since they were kids. And if you're new to this hobby, it's a little intimidating to be in a room like that, and it's kind of a turnoff. So I think that kind of welcoming aspect, if we can do more of that, and I think people have been doing a great job of that, especially at cons. I mean, this past year I went to SD HistCon, I went to Circle DC, and kind of the number of underrepresented folks there was very impressive, and I think it'll only get better from here. But I think there is kind of a conscious need to be more welcoming to folks. Marcel, do you have something?
Yeah, well, so I was thinking, first of all, when I read the question, that actually, of course, the Zenobia Award and maybe similar initiatives are a good basis, I think, for this kind of things, or like to support. I basically also fully agree with what Christienne said, that it's really important to have like a community, and like we had our own little Discord group of finalists that we just discuss things. It helps to maybe overcome a bit things like imposter syndrome that most designers, or maybe all designers, but most, at least I had, that removes a bit of that, because you're supported by others. Only slowly, now that my game has some success, I start to actually believe that I made a good game. Because before it was like, yeah, just hoping that people like it. So I think, yeah, having the support from others just helps. What I did in my own game specifically, because I was planning to self-publish, I decided that basically at the end of Zenobia Awards, after talking to some interested publishers, I decided it's potentially best to self-publish. So I had to do this campaign very shortly on. My first Kickstarter campaign, but in the art that I was making for the game, then I tried to also represent people in the art as much as I could, as well as in the characters that you can play. So that, which was not necessarily easy. Like I knew from the start I wanted to have 5 women and 5 men as characters, or at least an even number. But I also wanted to make sure I had people from the underrepresented groups as the characters. And since I wanted them all to be based on real people, and the amount of stories on people on the Dutch resistance that were not white males was a lot more limited. So, and then most of the things outside that were white females. So I had to really struggle a bit to find stories that they're really actually characters based on those people and not just only their name. But I'm happy to find like 2 characters out of the 10 that really are that are like from underrepresented groups, so that I wanted if someone, my game is not for children necessarily, but if a child would grab my game, that they could find a character that they could sort of see themselves as to get more into that. So I think if you're designing a game, keeping those kind of things, both art, characters, and stuff like that in mind, could also be another point that I would think could help make people feel, like they're represented.
Yeah, sorry, to just build on what Marcel said, I think it's quite important for publishers to be, I think, quite open to having the designers, especially of like games on underrepresented topics, to keep the designer involved in like the development process and like things like naming conventions or artwork, that kind of thing, things that could quite easily go quite wrong if put into the wrong hands. I think it's something that Whirligig's been really good at keeping me in the loop with, and having a say in all of that stuff. I think that's a really important thing, to make people comfortable to even make the decision to entrust their game with a publisher. Like, I think that's an important conversation that should happen kind of at the start of the process.
Well, let's see what Mar Hepto has to tell us about their work and their experience in Zenobia.
Hello. Well, first of all, I apologize in advance. I prefer to stay off camera. If I prepared better, I would have had a nice little backdrop for y'all or something. But I appreciate being here. And I'm, aspiring first-time designer and all. I'm working on a game about the satanic panic of the 80s in the United States. So if that means something to you, if that doesn't mean anything to you, basically for about a decade, for the decade of the 80s, there were sporadic moments of general fervor and panic over the idea that there were vast networks of Satan cults, Satan worshiping cults, kidnapping children and abusing them in American towns, usually in daycares, or often in daycares. And I wanted to make a game where you are residents of Smallville, USA, 4 different residents who are each using their respective industries' tools to try and find the perpetrators, find the guilty parties, while also sort of competing to keep the public invested in the concept of Satanism and the idea that Satan is real and alive on planet Earth. So it's been, the experience of working on this in the Zenobia project for the Zenobia Award has been really, really educational and interesting. It's a topic that I find very interesting, in part because I think there's not a lot of games that deliberately or methodically explore the sort of social motivations behind certain historical movements or episodes. A lot of, especially in the wargame sphere, and I don't want to underplay any work that already exists, but I get the sense that a lot of war games focus on kind of, you can study like the tactics of a given battle or the movement of materials or forces, but games, beyond being able to simulate, beyond being rules that beyond being sets of systems that simulate situations, games have a whole layer of social relationships and social resources that they can draw on. And I mean, it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Cole Worley and his work. And so I really admire, when I played Oath and John Company for the first time, I really admired the ways those games sort of intentionally tap into the relationships that the players have above the table and sort of navigate or impose new ones on them. And so that's sort of what I wanted to work on with the with the Devil's Advocates. By the way, I forgot to, the game is called the Devil's Advocates for now. And so, well, that's something I really wanted to explore, and to sort of put the players in the roles of the people who were or could be in the position to create or drive the panic. I find that a lot more interesting than framing it as like, you know, the skeptics versus the believers or whatever, like just having it be a two-sided fight, because that's not really the history of the time. And I feel like participating in the Zenobia Awards, I've really appreciated the degree to which all the mentors have responded and have been communicative about these kinds of topics when I've reached out to them. I feel like I've managed to pick their brains, as it were, get a lot of insight from them related to how they have handled similar issues or how they've represented certain topics or dynamics in their work. And so that's been a really good experience. Or being in contact with the other members of my pod. I think Federico was talking about the pods earlier. And so I really appreciate that I sort of have that opportunity. And I guess actually it's a good to kind of attach this discussion to the last question that was asked, as to what are important things to keep underrepresented communities engaged in games, or to keep them or reach out to them and help them create games. A lot of it is programs like the Zenobia or other things that help put people in contact with other members of the industry. A lot of the ways for that to organically happen involve attending conventions and sort of socializing and mingling with people there, with both developers and publishers there. And I've had, a wonderful time at the gaming conventions that I've been able to attend, but I know there are others who can't necessarily easily pack up and just go to one of these conventions, like go to one of a few specific conventions in the United States on a whim. And even I am, not always super mobile. I apologize for the siren passing by if you can hear it. So I think that the advantage of having those kinds of online programs is that you don't need to physically be in the same place as a designer, as a publisher, to get them to discuss your work, or even just to get their perspective on things. And I think that's really, really important. I'd rank that as I'd rank that kind of outreach that can sort of make up for certain material lacks or material disadvantages is really, really important if you want the hobby or the historical gaming space to grow and diversify into, or gain more diverse perspectives. Yeah. I don't know what I could talk. There's plenty of things I could say about the game. I don't know if there's anything in particular people want to know about or want to hear discussed. But I am really grateful that I get to workshop this and work on it for the Zenobia Awards. It was incredibly gratifying to be able to play test it publicly, or to be able to have a prototype that I feel confident showing to other people and getting their responses to. And it's like that alone is really satisfying. This game has gotten like further in terms of the development of the prototype than any of the other games I've worked on or any of the other little projects I've worked on. And it's also been extremely, extremely gratifying to hear that people sort of connect with the theme or can appreciate what the, or sort of understand what the design is trying to communicate. I feel like it is extremely rewarding to feel like, oh, I actually have an idea for a game here. I don't just have a bunch of scraps of paper and boards, you know. Like it's been very rewarding to hear that people can, that I've managed to communicate some of the ideas that I want to talk about, even if there's this game needs lots and lots and lots of refinement before it's fully realized.
Thank you. It looks like Marcel has another thing to add about the topic of what needs to happen to diversify the tabletop gaming space. Go ahead.
Yeah, so going back a bit to also what Akar said, that we have to maybe spend like more time and more effort and on I don't know how to say it correctly in English, but to make sure that we maybe put a bit more effort or more attention, like over attending. Basically what I wanted to add, like for example, if I use my own game, like there is percentage wise, there were the underrepresented groups in the theme in my game were even much more underrepresented there than yeah, like the percentage was really, really small. And if I would make my game more historically accurate, I should not have any characters from these underrepresented groups because they were so small. There were groups with just out of the 25 to 50,000 people that were sort of actively in the resistance, there were maybe like from certain groups only like maximum 100 people, and I still have a character from that group in my game. So that would not really, percentage-wise, really make sense to have them as a character, but I did really wanted to have them in there. So, and the same with some of the art pieces. There are much more people from groups that were not that actively in the resistance because there were not even that many people of those groups in the Netherlands in general. So I think that is maybe one of the things that we as designers could try to put in their game and try to see if we can find a balance between keeping it historically accurate and keeping it like, and adding these things in. Because it's not like I made up that there is people from that group. The group was just very small, and I still decided to add them in there. So I think that could be ways to try to add more of those things in current games. So that's what I wanted to add, to try to see how can we find this balance between what really happened and what is percentage-wise correct versus like how do we add them in there, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense a bit of what I tried to say there. A bit more over-representation is not bad, basically, is what I think it comes down to, as long as it's still historically fitting.
Well, we're really interested in fielding more questions.
I could mention maybe for those, I didn't really publicly mention it yet actively, but since I'm doing my campaign in a month and trying to hopefully finish everything for that after that, I am trying with my publishing company to see if I can publish another person's game after that. So yeah, basically if there's someone who has a game, I'm willing to look at it after my next campaign to see if I maybe could publish one of the other Zenobia games in the future as well. I'm basically looking for a bit smaller game, but preferably a historical game, because the games I've published so far are two a bit bigger ones. But yeah, so basically a bit of an invitation. If someone thinks they have a game that might fit with what I already published, yeah, they can try to see if they can reach out and yeah, so I thought I'll mention it as well.
I have a question of our contestants who are here, actually, and that is, how did you find out about the Zenobia Award competition? Like, where did you see it? Where did you find it And what made you think, oh, okay, I'll give it a try?
I can start if you want. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I heard about it in the podcast, in Beyond Solitary podcast. I follow it for a while. And I think it was an interview to you, Christienne. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was really motivating. I would like when the podcast starts, it's like, we were talking about this contest, and I was like, interesting. And when the podcast ends, I was like, I will apply to this contest. So it was really, you did a good job there.
Well, I actually applied to the first one 2 years ago. Didn't get in, which I do not have any hard feelings about because my ideas were bad. And I have learned a lot more in the 2 years since. But I do think I was kind of lucky that I saw that it was happening this year. I don't remember the exact timeline, but I think I found out about it shortly before the application period opened. And so there was sort of a moment of I didn't even know if I was going to apply. And then I was just sort of browsing. I was sort of casually brainstorming topics, and then I thought of the Satanic Panic one. I was like, oh, this actually sounds like a fun thing to work on. So I started I put together a few things for the application and submitted it at the very last minute. And I'm very glad I got to participate. And I'm hoping that I'm hoping that that lots more people should the program continue, and I hope it does. I'm hoping lots more people will be able to too. But yeah, I think I mostly saw it through like the discussions that I think there were the first time it happened. I think there were some posts on Board Game Geek or people posting on, like, designers I follow that were posting on Twitter. That's mostly how I found out about it.
I'm seeing all the answers. People have seen it in different places. Okay, well, I think unless anyone else has anything to add or any questions, I think that this is about all we had to say. Are we all finished?
Do you remember, Akar, how you found it there? Because I have a lot of trouble trying to remember when and how I found it. I think Board Game Geek, but I don't really know anymore for sure. So I thought maybe you'd know, Akar, how it went for the first one.
I think I followed some people on Twitter. I don't remember. It was either Volko or Harold or Liz. But yeah, I don't remember offhand.
Okay.
I had a question for. Is Joe still here?
No, I left, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's fine.
So could someone from the Zenobia Awards speak to what a new applicant might already need to know, if anything, about game design?
I can take this one.
Yeah.
I think we were aiming, and I'm not sure we hit this, but I think we were aiming for it to not require any. That basically you should be able, if you've played a bunch of historical games, you should be able to kind of slip in, and if you're willing to work, I think we didn't want to have any sort of prerequisite knowledge. So I'm hoping that kind of worked out. I know. So, I mean, a big portion of this was trying to build mentorship. Sorry, there's a B. And so the idea was that you should be able to enter and kind of make your mentorship what you want it to be. So we've noticed that with some contestants, they've been kind of working on their own, and they're happy just to design their own stuff and then submit it. And other people have been more involved, talking to the mentors, really getting answers to questions. So ideally, it's kind of, you can make what you want out of it. So if you already have a lot of experience in game design, you can kind of hit the ground running. Otherwise, you can kind of work on things pretty closely with your mentor and hopefully take the time to do that.
I would simply add, having done Zenobia twice and having taught game design for education game design, that the only thing you really need is as deep a game literacy as you can manage. So, you know, the more games you play, the bigger your mechanic vocabulary is. And that makes it possible for you to try different things more smoothly. I mean, in some ways you can only design, not only, but it's close to only design games whose mechanics you've played before. If you don't know that there's a tool that will solve a particular problem, then you can't use that tool, right? So I'd say that there's a competitive advantage to people who've played very deeply tabletop games very deeply as compared to played 2 or 3 games for many, many years. So play games. That's going to help you with Zenobia probably more than anything else. And it's not that it's a requirement, but that's going to really make you more nimble in terms of going through the rapid iterations, the rapid, prototype changes, right? That's going to make you more nimble. I think that that's the only thing I can imagine.
I think something I would add to that on the other side, and it's not something I know, I've puzzled for a long time. I don't know if this is something that can be learned or you just have this ability to see things. But on the historical side, we have game mechanics, and what you said, Christienne, is absolutely spot on in terms of the helpfulness of a toolbox of game mechanics. And on the other side is, how do you see history or humanity, or politics, whatever it is that you're trying to model. And what games, I think, really excel at bringing out is the dynamics of complexity, of how relationships and the constant movement of different actors and factors against each other form a larger whole of its own character. And I don't know that everyone looks at history or human affairs that way. If you're thinking about history of this thing happened, and then that thing happened, and then this thing happened, that's not a very interesting model for a game. But if you're looking at a historical community, is kind of think about the way that our designers today have talked about their historical topics. It's seeing systems, it's seeing people principally, that affect each other, communities that affect each other, external factors, norms, weather, geography, economy, and how that affects people relating to each other. And because a big step that I think is difficult for many people to take, but game designers take, is going from this idea in my mind of how these different things relate, and that's quite complex, and translating to that, to how different players and game actions and other mechanics relate to model that. And that's a big step that I think not everyone does well.
Well, I would like to really thank everybody who volunteered to represent Zenobia and did so very beautifully. And I would like to encourage people to get in touch with us about Zenobia if you have questions about it. Would like to think about participating either as a mentor, a volunteer, or as a contestant. And I think that's about it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.